All right, hi everyone. Welcome to this Friday edition of Believe in Bills. Adam Bonini, WGRZ TV Buffalo, Sal Majorana, Rochester Democrat and Chronicle. As always, guest from South Florida today is our good friend Joe Rose, who, Joe, I've had the pleasure of knowing you for years through the NBC connection and your days at WTVJ. He is the radio color voice of the Miami Dolphins and former Dolphin tight end back in the day. Joe, great to see you. Welcome. How are you?
Adam, Sal, it's great being with you guys and talking about someday. I hope it's going to really be a good rivalry again. I hope so at some point. So far, it hasn't been that way.
Yeah. We were talking off air real quick that Joe started his career in 1980, and it must have been your first game, Joe, was in Buffalo because it was the season opener. And I was there as a 17-year-old lunatic fan that day when the Bills broke the 20-game losing streak to the Dolphins. So Joe joined the team, and the Dolphins immediately lost to the Bills. So I don't know if there's a correlation there, Joe.
Yeah, hey Sal, it must have been because all those guys, there were a handful of guys from the undefeated team still on that 1980 team, and so it kind of gone through a few days before, and it hit the bus on the way to the stadium, and going, you know, we haven't lost to these guys. O.J. Simpson never beat us, and they're going through, and all those teams that they were really good, but they never beat us. We beat them 10 straight or 20 straight, and home, away, it didn't matter. And then of course that day it came to an end. So that was it, the field goal post. And that was kind of my welcome to the National Football League in a regular season game right there.
Yeah, I was there the year before too, Joe, and Tom Dempsey, who was kicking for the Bills, had a chance to win the game in the last seconds. 34 yards, and he missed it. They would have broken the streak that day. It would have spared you the ignominy
I wish
of having that happen.
Because it stuck with me for a long time. You know, it's funny. Yeah.
And you were saying that was an early impression of, this is football in Buffalo too, for you, right?
Well, it was because I'd come from out of Cal. I've been drafted out of Cal at Berkeley, where, one sellout a year, that was a Stanford game. And if it fit around everybody's academics, you might come to the game, but there was a lot of small crowds and, it's moving on. And you found out the passion of, and I've learned it very well now, 40 something years later, of the passion of, I was telling you guys before we started, the Buffalo Bill fans at Hard Rock Stadium. And last week at Seattle, I heard those guys talking about how many fans from the Buffalo Bills were in Seattle. And I was like, wow, yeah. And obviously it's been a real home field advantage up there in Buffalo. No matter what the temperature is, it's with that weatherproof quarterback you have, it's usually pretty good.
Yeah, right. All right, so let's get into that. 31-10 back in week 2, Bills went down there and took care of business in South Florida. And, a lot's transpired. Tua Tagovailoa went down in that game with the unfortunate concussion. He's back now. Narrow loss to the Cardinals last week, but you could see, it's obvious the difference he makes when he's the starting quarterback for the Miami Dolphins. So at 2-5, what can Bills fans expect? What version of the Dolphins are going to show up here or is going to show up here in Orchard Park on Sunday?
Well, it's got to be – this is the biggest game in Mike McDaniel's head coaching career. This is a big one. You got to win road games. You got to beat the really good teams. And you really, on top of that, you really can't go 2-6. You just, we can talk about schedule and, well, we have a good chance of this one and that one, but you got to take care of teams. And we've let some games slip away. We had a 10-point lead in the last 2 games, and we let them slip away. And now, you got your toughest, most difficult road game and a team that's dominated the AFC East. It's a good time. Tua really gave us a lift last week. There was right off the bat, drives down the field. You could see the excitement back with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, who basically been on a vacation before that for over a month with numbers. We're talking about 1 catch each in 1 game. For the amount of ability and money that's been spent and the numbers they put up the last couple of years. And since Tua's been out, there's been no numbers. There's been no production out of that position. So I think for those guys, a lot more excited, especially Tyreek Hill, to get Tua back there. But they got to take it to the next level and still get the big play back in this offense, which is what we've had with those two the last 2 years that we don't have right now. The running game's actually been good. The starting 5 offensive line, this is the best they played in a long time. 150, 180, 190 yards rushing the last 3 weeks. But you got to learn how to win. You got to learn how to close and all those things that we've all talked about. But it's been going on. And there's just a lot of frustration, guys. Adam and Sal, we haven't won a playoff game in 24 years. Yeah. In case you didn't hear that stat on top of everything. And it's kind of and Mike brought it up before the year that, it's important and, we got to take it to the next step. And it just hasn't been a great start. And they got a lot of talent on the team. Just got to come together. And we need our best players to play their best.
Joe, I was in Seattle last week and we're watching on the Red Zone. We had the Jets game on and the Dolphins. And for most of those days, it looked like both teams were going to win. The AFC East was going to get maybe a little bit tighter. Yeah. I just could not believe what I was watching with the Dolphins defense, because that defense has played actually pretty well. I looked at some of these games. They're actually doing a pretty good job on defense, especially when Tua was out and they knew they had to limit teams scoring. So what the hell happened last week, how the Cardinals were able to move down the field at the end of the game? I was just really surprised that happened.
I thought the safety really flipped the game around. Tua, the ball, the snap goes out of the back of the end zone, the safety. We're up 10 at that point. We got the ball. In Badfield was backed up. And then from there, they have, after the safety, you kick it and they go right down and score. And the game really changed. But getting back to what you're talking about, so the pass rush didn't get there. We had some key guys out, like you guys. Nobody wants to hear about, and I've been preaching this. Nobody wants to hear about injury. When you win a game, Sal and Adam, you win the game, you win the game. You don't talk about it's next man up. It really is. And every week, we're still waiting on a couple guys right now to see if they're going to play this week. And if they don't, oh, well, next man up, man. It's a 53-man roster, not 22. So that's a thing. But coverage wasn't great. We blitzed, but we didn't get to Kyler Murray, and he got outside and he kept plays going. He's very athletic. And, like everybody, man, you get on a roll and you can't stop people. They got some matchups they like with their tight end and their first-round draft pick on the outside, Marvin Harrison, and they chewed us up, couldn't stop them. And then even at the end of the game, they needed a field goal, and they marched it right down, chewed up all 5 minutes of the clock, got a nice short field goal to make it easy, kicked it, ball game, and we lose, we lose at home. But Sal, I was surprised too. The defense has been really good. Coach Weaver's done a great job of play calling. We're calling more blitzes. When we don't get a pass rush, we got to blitz more. And right now, we got some guys out. The way we started last year, Jalen Phillips is out now. He's out for the season. And so you're just shorthanded. We're playing with a lot of young guys, and hey, next guy up, you got to get there. And we're not getting enough pass rush. It's going to be interesting to see what they do. This is going to be another week where we face, this time, not a small athletic quarterback, but a big athletic quarterback. And hey, we have seen him. He's 12-2 against the Dolphins. I'm not telling you guys Josh Allen has run for over 100 yards against us. I've seen them all up close. He's thrown. I saw him last year. He had the perfect QB rating, which you don't get a lot of those. He threw one of those at us up at Buffalo a year ago. He was fantastic in that game. So I'm really curious to see what the game plan is going to look like, because these guys got to play with desperation. They got to get this game.
On both sides of the ball, really. And I want to get into, Josh Allen has had Miami's number, so has Sean McDermott. And I want to get into that as well right after a quick word from the sponsor, guys. Stand by. BetOnline is the world's most trusted platform and your number one source for everything football. Head to the website today to get on the action. BetOnline, the game starts here. Adam Bonini, WGRZ TV, Sal Mayorana, Rochester Democrat and Chronicle, Joe Rose, the radio color voice of the Miami Dolphins. We are pleased to have him with us today ahead of Sunday's matchup. 1 o'clock, Orchard Park, Bills at 6-2, Dolphins at 2-5 at this point. You mentioned Josh Allen, 12-2 against Miami. We'll talk more about him in a moment, but the head coach, Sean McDermott, 14-2 as head coach of the Dolphins, as head coach of the Bills against the Miami Dolphins. And I guess, you mentioned that week 2 game last year, Joe, and Sal and I talked about it earlier in the week. Miami had come in so productive offensively, right? They were talking about a historic level of production potentially, right, and all of those things. And it starts out kind of a fast sort of track meet game, and the Bills quickly were able to put the brakes on them. By the second quarter, McDermott kind of had things figured out, and he was calling the defense last year. But really, that was sort of the blueprint to slow them down. And that's been the case historically in this matchup. What is it about Sean McDermott defenses that have been like kryptonite for a Miami Dolphins team that's so talented on the offensive side of the ball?
Adam, it's funny you say that because a lot of people in the NFL think our problems this year when you won in week 2, this just earlier, just a month ago, and the players talked about it. The Dolphin players talked about it. The too deep, the way they ran. You had a lot of guys defensively out in that first game. People forget you guys. You're missing a lot of guys. There were guys that couldn't play in the secondary, and so. But the too deep that they've run, I've never heard our guys talk so much about. Yeah, well, the too deep they took this away. The too deep, and I'm like, wow, teams ran too deep against us last year. I didn't hear all this talk, but loosening up, forcing you to dump it off underneath. And getting pressure, obviously, pressure helps, and getting to where he's not comfortable, but not allowing those big plays where you get an extra second to throw those slant routes, those skinny posts, the corner routes, all the things that we like to do that we did so well a year ago against most teams, not everybody. But that was taken away. And after that Buffalo game, man, of course, Tua got knocked out in that game as well against Buffalo. But that wasn't a great game either. We weren't playing great. We had a pick 6. Buffalo ran one back for the third interception in that game. But that seemed to really start something. Their style of defense that the Buffalo Bills kind of started. And we just really, with our backup, we played with second, third, and a fourth quarterback already this year. And so having Tua back, he's seen it all. He seems to have a little edge to him. He's heard it all. Starting with a concussion, you can imagine what it's like. So he had to have a press conference saying, I want to play. This is me. I want to play. I know the risk. I want to play. And he's kind of had that attitude and talking about the shotgun and everything like, hey, I know what I'm doing. And so he's a little fiery right now, and you can feel the whole team. They understand a lot of money was spent in the offseason on this football team. Stephen Ross, Mr. Ross, went out and signed off on what these guys wanted, got all our top players taken care of, and you got to produce. We felt this team had a chance to be as good as a team that went 11-6 last year, and that's it just hasn't fallen that way. But, they think, hey, now Tua's got another week. We can do more stuff. And it's going to be loud. This isn't going to be a home game where everybody's being quiet when we want to do all our motions and all our stuff. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. But I think there is a lot of pressure and urgency for this team to play a lot better because we just haven't seen a complete game. The closest thing was last week. And, of course, Arizona came back and beat us.
Joe, when I look at Miami's offense and the way the Bills have played defense against them, one thing that sticks out to me is the Bills are only going to rush 4 guys because they know Tua's going to get rid of the ball quickly. It's not worth it to try to blitz them. But do you think with them only rushing the 4 and then they can get 7 in coverage, like you said, they can play too high? They played a lot of dime defense in that first game because Terrell Bernard got hurt. So they had to go 6 DBs.
That's right.
And the 6 DB was Ingram, who had the pick 6. Do you think because the Bills only rush 4 almost exclusively that they're better equipped with 7 back to cover these guys that Miami can throw at people?
Yeah, it's a great question. What I left out is, listen, Von Miller had a great game against us. I mean, I know you guys haven't had him for a month. He got suspended. Might have been after our game or a game later. But Von Miller had a really good game. Now, he had a sack in that game, but he had a lot of pressures, a lot of one-on-one. Epenesa played great against us. Russo comes back home. We never liked those guys from South Florida, man. All those guys you have up there, I'm afraid of Amari Cooper, man. You got him with your running back and all those Miami kids. Good God, they have been fantastic. So, but to your point, they get a pretty good rush with the 4. Yeah. And you're right. And then you put, hey, your nickel all-pro guy didn't play the first time around, and he's back as well, you know. So the Dolphins understand, you know, it's going to be more of the same. But I agree with you. They got a pretty good game plan on what they've done. And if they get a pass rush with 4, wow, it makes it real difficult. And listen, as good as Buffalo's front 4, their numbers are good anyway as pass rushers. But those guys, they've been pretty good. You've had a lot of guys play a lot of good football games. And that goes the other side of the ball. A lot of guys I have come on from the NFL. I think Buffalo Bills have one of the best 3 offensive lines in the National Football League. Nobody really talks. You know, we talk about Detroit. We talked about Philadelphia. And everybody kind of forgets about Buffalo. Buffalo blocks us, man. Run block, pass protection. It's pretty clean. Josh Allen had a pretty clean I said on the show Monday morning after that game, Josh Allen had the day off in that first game. He really did. Defensively, they didn't have a lot of yards in that game. Josh didn't have to take a lot of hits. He didn't put up big numbers. He didn't have to take off and run much. He might have once or twice. So I thought, man, you can do that and you don't make that guy work. He's had some games against Dolphins where he's had to work. He's had to take off, and in the playoff game, you know, it was a tight ball game and we're playing with our backup quarterback, and he finally took off and had some huge runs to help him win that game when things weren't going well offensively. But he had it off. He had it off that last game. But defensively, it's been a great scheme, and I think their personnel just really matches up well against our offense.
Well, let's talk about the Buffalo offense and Josh Allen, because here he is now leading in the MVP race at this point of the year. And Sal and I talked earlier this week about the fact that statistically it's a little bit different this year for Josh. He's got the turnovers under control to this point, right? And that's something he absolutely had to clean up. But this is I referred to it as a more refined version of Josh Allen, kind of a smarter, more mature version that we've seen. Now, earlier in the season, the passing game after they moved on from Stephon Diggs kind of lacked the explosiveness that we had seen from Buffalo under Allen or with Allen in the past. But then they go out and they added Amari Cooper, right? And so now they have the ability to kind of take the top off of defense. And we've seen it in the last couple of games, just his presence, the difference that makes, and then complemented by a very strong running game with a good offensive line, as you said. How difficult is this Buffalo offense to defend?
Boy, I tell you what, I'm probably the wrong guy. Their numbers, Adam and Sal, I could sit here. They just absolutely I don't see the other AFC East games with the Buffalo and the Jets and Buffalo and the Patriots. I can't imagine they play any better than they do against the Miami Dolphins.
They don't.
To the football. I mean, they finish drives. I've seen it every possible way. Now we see this new version of all these receivers and spreading it out, getting both your tight ends involved. Shakir has been fantastic. He's been a nice piece. Your second-round pick out of Florida State's picked it up the last couple of weeks. All of a sudden, GM's got to be feeling pretty good, man. You draft a guy in the second round, he comes in and he starts playing well. And then on top of that, you get an established guy like Amari Cooper, who, listen, he had to spend the day in church, man, after he got out of Cleveland to come play for the Buffalo Bills, and knowing he's coming there, he's going to be a big part of it at some point. But I love the way they're spreading the ball out. Just it's good. It's good for everybody. Everybody's involved. You're never out of it. Maybe 2 catches in a game, maybe 3 catches in a game. I think Josh tried to say that, but it came back as kind of a shot at Stephon Diggs. That, you know, but you can read between the lines. You know, when you got to feed somebody to keep them happy, and And now all of a sudden you got a bunch of guys that, hey, we're doing it as a team, and everybody, you never know when your number is going to be called. And Kincaid's, all of them are such a big part of this offense. So, hey, I like I said, I'm really curious. It's not necessarily about explosive plays down the field. And you guys through the years have had those with your starting receivers a year ago. But, man, this thing, it works. And we're talking about almost 29 points a game. It's working, what they're doing.
Joe, I wanted to ask you about the running game on both sides, because Miami has really run the ball well. The last 3 weeks, they're like the third best rushing team in the NFL. And we don't normally associate the run game when you've got Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and all those guys. So tell me a little bit about HN, and obviously Mostert is a great player too, but even the kid is
Jalen
Wright. What's going on there? Because like I said, we don't usually think about Miami's running game, but it's really been important for them so far.
You know, it's and I think this is all an adjustment, Sal, because you got one football. And last year we had one football, and we know it was usually going outside. A lot of it was going outside, and Tyreek was getting his targets. That guy, you're getting him the ball, and you're getting 1,700 and something yards on the outside from one guy. But we are in really good shape. We got three really good running backs. Jalen Wright, they moved up to get from Tennessee. He's been great. Now, of course, when you're losing, people don't want to see the veterans. They want to see more of the young guys, and I think that's a good problem to have. Raheem Mostert coming off 21 touchdowns a year ago was so good. And they said, hey, we understand we got to get Jalen the ball, but Achane he's turned into your number one guy. He's your pass catching running back. He's carrying the ball a lot. He's had some games, 130, 140 total yards, a little bit like your number one guy looks as well. It's a good position, that in the running game. This is the best. Our offensive line, starting because all five of those guys are healthy. Teron Armstead, this is the most football he's played. He's been really good at left tackle. He has been really, really good as a left tackle of this team. He's kind of the leader, but all five guys have been playing together for a long time, and we don't usually have that. We usually got guys hurt. Your guys, you got some durable offensive linemen. Those guys play together. Heck, they know each other. They know everything. They can see an adjustment, make it quickly. And I'm starting to feel that with our guys, getting after a pretty good inside as well as the run outside. And so it has to happen. Listen, we've been held back by the quarterback play. That has held this thing back. And so when Tua's out, you saw in game one back, he's got to get more comfortable still in the pocket. I believe that. But he made some really good throws. He missed a couple, but he made some good throws. Well, we got to balance this thing out and control the ball as much as possible. I think they feel like they can run the ball against anybody right now. Always been good running the ball outside with Mike McDaniel. That's never been a problem. But being able to run the ball inside now a little bit has really helped.
All right, so maybe
I wanted to ask you about Buffalo too, because if Cook can get going, that makes them really scary, dude. I mean, I don't think the Bills have really paired the type of running game they have this year with Josh Allen since he became Josh Allen. It's always been the Josh Allen show. Man, they're leaning on James Cook way more than they've leaned on any other back since he's been here, I think. What have you seen from him?
Well, I've seen him since high school. I go to high school football games. You talk about no life. I go to high school football games at Trask Powell down in Miami, where ironically Central and Miami Northwestern play their home games. Of course, Amari Cooper and the Cook family, James and Dalvin Cook, played their games there. So they've had some great running backs at those schools, great players. Those schools are loaded with NFL talent throughout. You can look every week if you're watching and look at a roster, and there's a Miami Central or Miami Northwestern from the inner city that where football is everything, and those guys have been a big part of it. But I got to tell you, Cook is I knew he was going to be a good receiver coming out of Georgia. I was a little surprised he went in the second round, to be honest. But, man, he has been what a great draft pick and shown some durability. His runs, he broke a long run against us in week one. You put in an extra offensive lineman, and that seemed to really help. They load up it against us, and if we're shorthanded, they they come in with extra offensive linemen, but he is really good, man. He's a total package. Great out of the backfield. Been a lot more durable than I thought in this league where, you have to have 3 or 4 running backs on everybody's team because they get hurt. But he has been really special. He had a great game in week 2 against the Dolphins on that Thursday night. He was fantastic.
All right. So lastly, Joe, here, as lopsided as this rivalry has been in Buffalo's favor in the McDermott-Allen era, if the trend is going to be reversed, given all the factors we've discussed and the dynamic with each of these teams right now, as you see it and prepare to call this game, what does Miami have to do, and how realistic is it for that to potentially happen?
Well, you got to clean it up to start with. You got to believe you can go there and beat them. I've been too many teams through the 24 years that have gone up to Buffalo and really didn't believe they could beat them. I know we blame the weather. Weather gets blamed. I say, it's funny when you have a really good team, you don't hear about weather as much. But we're catching some good weather. Listen, I think we're getting in the 50s. You guys know more. I know you guys aren't in the weather industry, but in the business.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, it should be a great day for football for everybody, no matter where you're from. But we got to clean it up. Let's start with that. We got to clean it up. We've had a lot of penalties. It's been better in recent weeks, but the little mistakes. We had the ball on the ground 4 times last week. We got most of them back except the safety. And the safety was a huge, huge play because you were leading by 10 and had the football. And you're backed up. You're going to be backed up. At some point, everybody's going to be backed up. You can't give up the safety and then get the ball right away and come down and score like Arizona was able to do. I think they know they have to play a clean game, and you got to somehow get after Josh Allen. But there's a lot of different parts of this team. You go through it, and I'm like, man, they have to play a really good game if they're going to have a chance to beat Buffalo. They really are. They got to play good on both sides. When you get a chance you get a blitz, you better get the tackle. You can't bounce off that guy and let him keep the play alive and take off and run or throw a 40-yard dart on a corner route or a crossing route. You can't let that happen. And you got to figure now, like last week, Arizona's tight end had a huge game. And all I could think of as I was doing the game last week is Dalton Kincaid. That's the first thing, because I think he's really good. He's former first-round pick out of Utah. He's a good player. He's a real good player. You guys got 2 really good tight ends that you've had for a long time. You got to cover them. And so we got to control the line of scrimmage the best we can, which we have not done against this group. With a 4-man rush that Sal was talking about, we got to block those guys. We got to get extra time. We got to be able to do it. Yeah.
Tell me about the desperation factor, because I believe they're 2-5 and they know damn well they have to win this game. You played in the league. I'm sure you have been in situations where your back's against the wall. How much do you think about that factor, that they are going to come here desperate no matter how much the Bills have owned them lately? Is that really something to pay attention to, the desperation?
Yeah, I think I've been pushing hard on the radio like, hey, this is Mike's biggest game. And this would be Mike's biggest win, Mike McDaniel's biggest win, if they can beat the Buffalo Bills under the circumstances of everything. You pounded us at home. Josh's record against us, dominating the AFC East. It's not about the Jets and Dolphins. It's still about Buffalo. And so to get a win there would be, it would just, there better be urgency. You're going to find out, right? You watch all the guys. You want to watch the game plan. It's got to be aggressive. You got to get after it. And listen, like I said, we're paying a lot of guys a lot of money on that team. What you guys spend to the cap, we spend to the cap. And we need our best players to play like the best players. We need our high draft picks to play like high draft picks. We need that. And I think we have an owner that's not very patient at this point. He's put in a lot to this thing. And, we all sat back and watched Tom Brady. Sal, Adam, 20 years, almost 20 years. Everything went through New England, and then in comes Josh Allen, and here we go again. It's a nice start for Buffalo, dominating the AFC. So yeah, man, this game is big for the team. I want to see him come out and play with fire and get after it, get after it and have a chance to win this game late. And if not, boy, you wonder about keeping the team together. Trade deadline's on Tuesday, along with a lot of other things going on Tuesday you're aware of. But this game is important to this team. Our fan base wants to see, like, hey, how you going to play against the big guys? This is a team we talked about. You guys beat us. You guys, Adam, Sal, Buffalo Bills beat us in that last game with one of the great comes back from where they were as a 500 team to win the rest of their games and then beat us to take the AFC East. I mean, you talk about ripping your heart out. That was it was a hell of a game. You guys come back and win that. And so I just I felt good about that game in week 2. I guess they're telling me I feel good about every game, but we need to really bring it now because we've had some bad losses. And the only way to feel better is you got to win in Buffalo. Period.
Shit, man. Joe, I felt good about that game too. I picked the Dolphins to win the week 2 game.
We both did.
Short week, Bills going down there. I thought Miami was in a good spot there to win.
Yeah, it's funny. Isn't that funny? And they had to travel to South Florida, and you're going, man, this is going to be, it should be nice and muggy and all those things. And you get 4th down stops, you get those takeaways. That's why I was talking about you got to have a clean game this time. I'm sure the Dolphins have looked. I'd like to think Mike looked back at that game to see what everybody was doing, what the game plan was. But he knows one thing. That turnover bug, that thing hasn't lied since they put together this game called the National Football League. Turnovers right on the top of everybody's list. And if you don't turn the ball over and the other team turns it over 3 or 4 times in the NFL, that must equal a loss 90-something% of the time.
Well, I'll tell you what, Joe, as we wrap it up here, I mean, the significance of this game, because it looked like this rivalry, given the personnel and the trends surrounding both of these franchises, that it was finally going to get back, to a highly competitive situation. And the Bills have obviously dominated. Maybe it'll be interesting to see if the pendulum can actually start swinging in Miami's direction on Sunday. 1 o'clock.
Yeah. Adam and Sal, it's going to be a difficult game. Look, I'm not going to sit here and say it's not. You saw what they did to Seattle. Sal was at the game. It was, they just wore them out. Yeah. And we played up there and they wore us out. So they know, we've got a lot of the same schedule and they've won 3 in a row. Josh has had great success, plays with great confidence. And so there's a lot of things. Where's Christian Wilkins when you need him, right? To come here and go with Josh Allen and get into it a little bit, man. I mean,
Hey, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much. I mean, it's been, when were you, how long were you at WGRZ?
Oh, man, you know what? It's funny. I've been coming up on those trips. Even before I did the games, I was coming up for NBC.
Right.
So I've been, straight through. Been coming to Buffalo since the field goal post came down in 1980, So,
Joe, I love
it. You can tell that really stuck with me, man. I love in the NFL. The post came down. I knew that was some big stuff. That one happened for sure.
I love when we have guests on who are older than me. I saw you play when I was a teenager.
Hey, I got to tell you, you know what? I don't know what the oldest broadcast teams are, but I can tell you, I'm 67. Jimmy 68 and Kim Bokamper 70, just to give you a feel for the 80s and even the 70s a little bit. So
talking about Jimmy Cephalo, that is tremendous. Yeah. Well, we'll look forward to rolling out the welcome mat for you here on Sunday in Orchard Park. Joe Rose, thank you so much.
Thanks, Adam. Sal's been really great. Thank you, and thanks for working with my schedule. I'm really sorry about making you guys. I appreciate it, Sal. Thank you. I know you got a lot of stuff going on, so thanks.
Really appreciate it. All right.
Just raking leaves today, Joe. Just raking leaves today.
Okay, I feel better.
Great to talk to you, man.
I'm wondering why everybody ate my house because we weren't here for Halloween last night. It's a rough place around here. Roses weren't around. Thanks, you guys.
All right, Joe. Look forward to seeing you Sunday. Right. Thanks so much. For Sal Mayorana, Joe Rose, Adam Benini, thanks for being with us here on Believe in Bills.